I never told my grandson about the $18 million sitting in my investment accounts. For 43 years, I walked the halls of Massachusetts General Hospital as a cardiac surgeon, saved over 2,000 lives, and developed a minimally invasive technique that's now used worldwide. The royalties alone bring in about $70,000 every quarter, but Danny never knew any of this. He grew up watching me clip coupons, drive my old Subaru, and live in the same modest townhouse in Medford that I bought back in 1987. Why keep it secret? I learned early in my career what money does to people. I watched colleagues' children become entitled, lazy, expectant. I watched families torn apart over inheritance, over who deserved what, over who contributed more. My own sister stopped speaking to me for 5 years because she thought I was flaunting my success. So I made a choice. I would live comfortably but quietly. I would let Danny build his own character, earn his own way, understand the value of a dollar, and for 28 years it worked beautifully. Then, he met Madison Pierce. The Pierces owned half the commercial real estate in downtown Boston and had a summer estate in Cape Cod that looked like something out of Architectural Digest. Madison herself seemed sweet enough, a talented interior designer with her own growing firm. But when Danny called to tell me he'd proposed and that her family wanted to host an engagement weekend at their Cape Cod property, something in his voice made me pause. "They're really excited to meet you, Grandma," he said, but there was hesitation there. "It's going to be pretty fancy. They do this whole formal thing with all their business associates and family friends." "That sounds lovely, sweetheart. I just want you to be comfortable. I know you don't really do the whole society scene thing." There it was. That apologetic tone, that subtle warning. He was already making excuses for me, already worried about how his simple grandmother would fit into their gilded world. "I'll manage just fine," I told him. But after we hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time thinking, I could have told him the truth right then. Could have mentioned that I'd probably attended more society functions as a keynote speaker than the Pierces had as guests, that I'd had dinner with senators and hospital board chairmen, that my name was on a wing of the hospital. But something stopped me. Call it intuition. Call it a lifetime of watching how people reveal their true characters when they think no one important is watching. I wanted to see exactly who my grandson was marrying into. And I wanted to see it from the perspective of someone they'd consider beneath them. 2 weeks later, I drove up to Cape Cod in my faithful Subaru, following the GPS directions to the Pierce estate. The house appeared at the end of a long private drive, a sprawling white colonial with black shutters and a widow's walk, tennis courts to the left, a boathouse down by the water. The circular driveway was already filled with Mercedes, BMWs, and Teslas. My dusty old Subaru looked like the help's car. Perfect. I dressed carefully that morning. Not in wrinkled clothes, mind you. I have too much self-respect for that, and poor people have dignity. But I'd chosen an outfit from at least 15 years ago, simple and dated, the kind of thing that quietly announced fixed income, polyester slacks from JCPenney, a floral blouse that had probably been fashionable around 2008, sensible shoes from Walmart. My only jewelry was my late husband's plain wedding band on a chain around my neck. Danny met me at the door, and I saw it immediately in his eyes, that flash of discomfort, that wish that his grandmother looked a little more polished, a little more impressive. "Grandma, you made it!" He hugged me, but it was quick, distracted. "Come on, everyone's out on the terrace. They're doing cocktails before dinner." He led me through a house that could have been a museum. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, original artwork on every wall. We walked past a formal living room where I caught a glimpse of a Steinway grand piano, through French doors to a terrace that overlooked the ocean, where about 30 people in expensive casual wear held glasses of wine and made the kind of laughter that comes easy when you've never worried about money. "Mother, Dad," Danny called out, guiding me toward a couple in their late 50s. "This is my grandmother, Eleanor Morrison." Catherine Pierce turned, and I watched her eyes do a full scan. Hair to shoes, probably calculating my net worth to the penny. She was one of those women who'd clearly had work done, wearing a white linen pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill, at least the bill she'd assume I had. "How lovely to meet you," she said, extending 2 fingers for what could barely be called a handshake. "Daniel has told us so much about you." I doubted that very much. Robert Pierce was tall, silver-haired, with the kind of tan you get from owning a yacht. He shook my hand with the firm grip of someone who'd spent his life intimidating people in boardrooms. "Welcome, Mrs. Morrison. Can we get you something to drink? We have wine, cocktails. Just water would be fine, thank you." Catherine's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Water. How quaint, how careful with money she must be. Madison appeared then, beautiful in a sundress that flowed when she moved, her hand tucked into Danny's arm. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm so happy you could make it." She kissed my cheek, and it seemed genuine enough. Young, probably kind in her natural state, before her parents' influence calcified into permanent snobbery. "Call me Ella, sweetheart, and congratulations to you both. Come sit with us," Madison said, leading me to a seating area. "I want you to meet everyone." The next hour was an exercise in being invisible. Catherine and Robert held court, introducing their important friends, dropping names, discussing real estate deals and yacht club politics. I was introduced to each group with the same apologetic little laugh. "And this is Daniel's grandmother. She drove all the way up from Medford." The emphasis on Medford, as if it were a third-world country rather than a perfectly respectable middle-class suburb. No one asked what I did before retirement. No one asked about my life. I was just Grandma, the obligatory elderly relative to be tolerated. I played my part, smiled sweetly, sipped my water, made small talk about the weather and how beautiful the house was, and I watched. Oh, how I watched. I watched Catherine steer Madison away from me 3 separate times, always with some urgent need to introduce her to someone more important. I watched Robert glance at his watch whenever someone mentioned anything that wasn't business or money. I watched their son Brandon, a sharp-dressed 30-year-old who worked in the family business, barely acknowledge my existence except to ask if I needed help finding the bathroom, as if I might be senile. But mostly, I watched Danny. I watched him laugh at Robert's jokes that weren't funny. Watched him agree eagerly with Catherine's opinions. Watched him minimize his own achievements when Robert asked about his architecture firm, making it sound smaller and less successful than it was. My grandson, who I'd raised to stand tall and proud, was shrinking himself to fit into their world. Dinner was served at a long table on the terrace as the sun set over the water. I was seated at the far end, away from the important guests. Catherine sat at the head, holding court like a queen. Salad arrived on china so fine you could see through it. Then lamb chops with some kind of reduction sauce and vegetables arranged like artwork. "This is absolutely delicious," I said to no one in particular. Catherine smiled down the table at me. "Our chef trained in Paris. Robert insists on the best." "I usually just make a simple stew," I offered, playing my role. "Stretch the meat across several meals, you know." I saw it. That look that passed between Catherine and Robert, that slight curl of the lip, that confirmation of what they'd already decided about me. Poor old woman, counting pennies, making do. The conversation flowed around me. They discussed their businesses, their properties, their children's accomplishments. Brandon was closing a major deal in the seaport. Madison's design firm had just been featured in Boston Magazine. Robert had just purchased another building in the financial district. "And what about you, Daniel?" Robert asked, in that tone of voice that suggested he already knew the answer wouldn't impress him. "How's the architecture business?" "It's good," Danny said too quickly. "We're staying busy." "Residential work?" Robert asked, and there was condescension dripping from those 2 words. "Mostly, yes. Some small commercial projects." Robert took a sip of his wine. "Well, perhaps once you're part of the family, we can throw some real projects your way. We're always building something." It wasn't an offer, it was a reminder of the hierarchy. We have the money, we have the power. "You'll be dependent on us." Danny just nodded gratefully. My chest tightened, not from my heart, which was still strong despite my age, from disappointment. After dinner, Catherine suggested the ladies retire to the sitting room while the men had cigars on the terrace. It was like stepping back into the 1950 seconds. The sitting room was all cream and gold, with furniture that looked too expensive to actually sit on. About 10 women arranged themselves artfully, discussing vacation homes and charity galas. I sat in the corner, still playing my part. "So, Eleanor," Catherine said, and the room went quiet. She was the kind of woman who commanded attention without asking for it. "Daniel mentioned you live alone?" Yes, since my husband passed. 20 years now. That must be difficult, financially, I mean. Her voice dripped with false concern. Medford can't be cheap these days. I manage. I'm sure Daniel helps out when he can. She shared a knowing look with the other women. Poor boy, probably supporting his grandmother. Actually, I've never asked him for money, I said quietly. How wonderful that you're so independent, one of the other women chimed in that tone people use when they really mean the opposite. It must be hard, though, on Social Security. I get by. Catherine leaned forward. You know, we were thinking. With the wedding coming up, there will be quite a few events. Engagement party, bridal shower, rehearsal dinner, all at rather nice venues. She paused delicately. We understand if that's not in your budget. We certainly don't expect you to contribute. There it was. The assumption, the dismissal. If you need help with attire for these events, another woman added, I know some lovely consignment shops. Consignment shops. My teeth clenched behind my smile. That's very thoughtful, I managed. The conversation moved on, leaving me behind like a stone they'd stepped over. They discussed their children's weddings, comparing venue costs and designer dress prices. $50,000 for flowers, $80,000 for the band, $100,000 for the reception venue. Madison sat quietly through most of it, looking increasingly uncomfortable. Every so often she'd glance at me with what looked like apology in her eyes. She was young. Maybe she didn't know how to stand up to her mother yet. Maybe she would learn, or maybe she wouldn't. The weekend continued in the same vein. Breakfast the next morning featured more subtle condescension. Catherine mentioned how lovely it must be to have simple pleasures at my age. Robert asked if I needed help understanding how to use the smart TV in my guest room. Brandon made a joke about me not understanding cryptocurrency that made everyone laugh except Madison and Danny, who both looked mortified but said nothing. Nothing. My grandson said nothing. Saturday afternoon, there was a sailing expedition. I declined, saying I preferred to rest. Truth was, I could have told them I'd sailed competitively in my 30s, that I'd once navigated from Boston to Bermuda, but that wasn't part of my role. Instead, I walked the estate grounds alone, past the tennis courts where Catherine was giving Madison unsolicited advice about the wedding, past the pool house where I overheard Robert on a business call, his voice sharp and demanding. This was their kingdom, and everyone in it was either a subject or a servant. That evening, Catherine asked me to join her in her study before dinner. The room was all dark wood and leather, expensive art on the walls. She gestured to a chair across from her desk. Eleanor, I wanted to have a private chat with you. She folded her hands on the desk. We've so enjoyed getting to know you this weekend. I waited. Robert and I have been discussing the situation, and we want to be direct with you. We can see that finances are tight for you. There's no shame in that, of course. You're on a fixed income. She opened a drawer and pulled out an envelope. A thick envelope. We'd like to help. She slid it across the desk. I looked at it but didn't touch it. There's $25,000 in there, she continued. We thought you might use it to make yourself comfortable. Perhaps update your wardrobe for the wedding events. Take a little trip, whatever you'd like. Consider it a gift from the family. But her eyes said something else. Her eyes said, consider it payment to not embarrass us. That's very generous, I said slowly. We only ask one small thing in return. Her smile was practiced, perfect. We're planning a rather grand wedding. Very high-profile guest list, including some important clients and investors. We were thinking that perhaps. Well, the formal events might be a bit overwhelming for someone your age. The engagement party, the rehearsal dinner, even the ceremony itself. So many people, so much standing. It might be more comfortable for you to simply attend a small family brunch the day after. Still celebrate, but in a more relaxed setting. The room was very quiet. You're asking me not to come to my grandson's wedding. We're suggesting an alternative that might be easier for you. She pushed the envelope closer. Take the money, Eleanor. Enjoy it. Let the young people have their day without worrying about you. Something cold settled in my chest. Not hurt. Not anymore. Just a clear, sharp understanding of exactly who these people were. I picked up the envelope. Held it for a moment. Then I put it down. I need to think about this, I said. Of course. Take your time. Catherine stood, dismissing me. But do let us know soon. We need to finalize the guest list. I walked out of that study and stood in the hallway for a long moment. 43 years I'd spent saving lives. I'd held beating hearts in my hands. I'd told families their loved ones would survive, or that they wouldn't. I'd made decisions in seconds that meant life or death. And these people thought they could buy me off with $25,000. I found Danny and Madison on the terrace watching the sunset. They were curled together on a love seat, his arm around her shoulders. They looked happy, young, in love. "Can we talk?" I said. Danny jumped up. "Grandma, of course. Is everything okay? Let's walk down to the dock." We walked in silence, the three of us, down the sloping lawn to where their boat bobbed gently in the water. The evening was beautiful, all gold and purple, the kind of light that painters dream about. "Your mother made me an interesting offer," I said to Madison. She paled. "Mrs. Morrison, $25,000 to skip the wedding." "What?" Danny's voice was sharp with shock. "That's not Grandma. I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding." She was quite clear. "I'm an embarrassment, a poor relation who doesn't fit their image. The money is to make me go away quietly." Madison had tears in her eyes. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know they were going to do that. But you knew they looked down on me. You've watched them do it all weekend." She nodded miserably. I turned to Danny. "And you? You've said nothing. Not when your future father-in-law implied your business was small time. Not when they seated me at the end of the table like a child. Not when they made jokes at my expense. You've been so busy trying to impress them that you forgot to stand up for the woman who raised you. Grandma, I'm sorry. I just thought... You thought it was easier to let them think I was some poor old lady who needed their charity." I looked at both of them. "Let me tell you something about character. Real character shows in how you treat people who can't do anything for you, people you think are beneath you, people who seem powerless." "You're not powerless," Madison whispered. "You raised an incredible man." "Did I?" I looked at Danny. "Because the man I raised would never let someone insult his family. The man I raised would stand up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable." Danny's face crumpled. "You're right. God, you're right. I've been a coward." "Yes, you have. I'll talk to them. I'll tell them they were completely out of line." "Will you?" I asked softly. "Or will you wait until after the wedding? Until the money's secure? Until you're part of their world?" He flinched like I'd slapped him. Madison spoke up then, her voice stronger. "Mrs. Morrison, I need to tell you something. I love your grandson, really love him. But I've been scared too. Scared of my parents, of not living up to their expectations, of disappointing them. They've controlled every aspect of my life, and I let them because it was easier than fighting." "That's not love," I said. "That's fear." "I know." She was crying now. "And watching them treat you this way, watching Danny not defend you. It made me realize that if we don't stand up now, we never will. We'll spend our whole marriage under their thumb, making ourselves smaller and smaller until we disappear." Madison Danny started. "No," she turned to him. "Your grandmother is right. We have to choose, right now. Do we want a marriage based on their approval and their money? Or do we want to build something ourselves, something real?" I watched them, these two young people at a crossroads. This was the moment. The moment where character either forms or fractures. Danny took a deep breath. "Grandma, there's something I need to tell Madison's parents, something I should have told them from the start. Will you come with me? I think you need to do this yourself, sweetheart." "No." He took my hand. "I need you there. Because what I have to say involves you." We walked back up to the house, where Catherine and Robert were entertaining their guests in the living room. Danny strode right into the middle of the room and asked for everyone's attention. "I have an announcement to make," he said, his voice steady now, clear. "This weekend you've all met my grandmother, and I've watched how you've treated her, with condescension, with pity, with the assumption that she's poor and simple and somehow less than all of you." Catherine's eyes went wide. "Daniel, this isn't the time." "It's exactly the time." He looked at me, and I nodded. "My grandmother isn't poor. She's not simple. She's Dr. Eleanor Morrison, one of the most renowned cardiac surgeons in the country. She worked at Mass General for 43 years. She developed the Morrison technique for minimally invasive valve replacement, which is now used worldwide. She's saved over 2,000 lives, and she's worth more than $15 million. The room went silent. Absolutely silent. She could buy this house twice over, Danny continued. But she chooses to live modestly. She chose to let me grow up without the burden of wealth, to build my own character, to understand the value of hard work. And this weekend, she chose to see exactly what kind of people I was marrying into. Robert's face had gone purple. Catherine looked like she might faint. The $25,000 you offered her? Danny's voice hardened. She makes that in royalties every quarter. The money you've been so proud of? She earned more than both of you combined over her career, and she did it by saving lives, not by buying and selling buildings. Madison stepped forward, taking Danny's hand. Mother, Dad, I love you, but I won't be part of a family that treats people this way. I won't raise children who think money makes them better than others. If you can't treat Mrs. Morrison, all people, with respect and dignity, then you won't be part of our lives. Catherine found her voice. Madison, you're being dramatic. We didn't know. You didn't ask, I said quietly, and everyone turned to me. In 2 days, not one of you asked about my life, my career, my interests. You just assumed. Because I drove an old car and wore simple clothes, you decided I wasn't worth your time or respect. I walked further into the room and I let them see me differently now, straightened my spine, met their eyes directly. Let 43 years of commanding operating rooms show in my posture. I've had dinner with governors, I said. I've given keynote speeches at international medical conferences. I've trained hundreds of surgeons who went on to save thousands more lives. My name is on a hospital wing, and yet this weekend I was treated like I was nothing, like I was an embarrassment. Dr. Morrison, Robert stammered, if we had known. That's exactly the point. You should treat people well regardless of what you know about them, regardless of what they can do for you. That's what character means. That's what integrity looks like. I turned to Danny and Madison. You two have a choice to make. You can build a life based on their values, or you can build something better. But I'll tell you right now, if you choose their world, I can't be part of it. I raised you better than that, Danny. Danny looked at Madison. She looked at him. And in that moment, I saw them grow up. We're leaving, Danny said, tonight, and the wedding is postponed until we can plan something ourselves, something that reflects our values, not yours. Daniel, don't be ridiculous, Catherine said. We've already put deposits down, invitations are ordered. I'll pay you back, Danny said, every penny. With what money? Robert scoffed. With mine, I said quietly. Because unlike you, I invest in character, not image. We left that night. Danny drove my Subaru while Madison followed in her car. We ended up at my townhouse in Medford, sitting around my simple kitchen table, drinking tea from mugs I'd had for 20 years. I'm sorry, Grandma, Danny said for the 10th time. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to yourself. You lost yourself this weekend, trying to be who they wanted. Promise me you'll never do that again. I won't, I swear. Madison looked around my small kitchen. It's so warm here, so real. That's because it's a home, not a showpiece. I took her hand. You're going to have to set boundaries with your parents, real ones. It won't be easy. I know, she squeezed my hand. But I'd rather have a small wedding in this kitchen than a grand one where people are judged by their bank accounts. 3 months later, that's exactly what we did. 30 people in my backyard, a simple ceremony, homemade food, and a lot of love. Catherine and Robert didn't come. They were too angry, too embarrassed. But Madison's brother Brandon did, and he pulled me aside during the reception. I've been thinking about that weekend, he said. About how we treated you. How I treated you. And I've been looking at my own life differently. At how I judge people. At how my parents raised us to value the wrong things. He paused. I'm starting therapy. Trying to figure out who I am outside of the family business. That was 6 months ago. Last week, Catherine called Madison. Said she wanted to talk, that she'd been doing some thinking of her own. They met for coffee. It was awkward, Catherine said, but it was a start. Robert hasn't called, may never call. Some people are too invested in their own image to admit they were wrong. But Danny and Madison are building a good life. A real life. They bought a modest house in Arlington, close enough to visit me. Danny's architecture firm is thriving, getting commissions based on his talent, not connections. Madison's design work is stunning, honest, focused on creating beautiful spaces for real families, not just showpieces for the wealthy. And me? I'm still in my townhouse, still driving my Subaru, still clipping coupons out of habit even though I don't need to, but I'm also setting up a foundation with some of my money. Scholarships for medical students from working-class families. Because I learned something important that weekend. Money isn't the problem. Money is just a tool. It's what you do with it, how you let it shape you, that matters. You can have $15 million and live with integrity and humility. Or, you can have $15 million and let it make you cruel. The Pierces chose cruelty because they thought money made them better. I chose humility because I know better. I know that character, real character, is measured in how you treat people when you have nothing to gain from being kind, in how you stand up for others even when it's uncomfortable, in choosing what's right over what's easy. That's what I wanted Danny to learn, and that weekend in Cape Cod, as painful as it was, taught him better than any lecture I could have given. Sometimes the best lessons come wrapped in silk and cruelty, served on fine china at a house by the sea. Sometimes you have to pretend to be less than you are, to show others how small they've made themselves. And sometimes, just sometimes, the people you love learn to stand tall again, to choose character over comfort, to build a life based on what matters. That's worth more than all the money in the world.